So let's talk the movie Hive. No, it's not a bunch of scum and villainy. It's basically a 2015 body horror virus infection style movie with a little bit of a twist. So this one has a unique sense of the way it tells its story. Well, I guess it's not that unique. We have seen it a couple of times before. But basically it starts off we're in a position towards the end of the film, and then the majority of the movie is then told in flashback, and we basically see the kind of the situation that our central character is in via flashback, and how he got to this kind of point in time. So the majority of film is kind of told in flashback, which I'm not a huge fan of. I mean, you know, if you kind of see Memento, that's obviously a film where that's done kind of very well, and it's obviously to the point of the film. I don't feel it is necessary in this movie, potentially, but, you know, it's an interesting choice. And basically, these kind of four, I guess, kind of young adults, teenagers, they go into this kind of like camp to kind of look after a bunch of kids, and then there's this kind of plane crash, and they get infected with this kind of gooey virus, basically, that turns these guys, once they're infected, into kind of like strange zombie-like creatures. Except the difference here is that they are intelligent, but they are kind of like they're connected to some kind of like hive mind, hence the title, and have this kind of like singular intelligence. And as the movie progresses, we find out sort of more and more about kind of what's going on and the effects. And basically, there's kind of like there seems to be this very kind of like high level of intelligence here that's kind of like controlling them, be it kind of alien or demonic, or whatever you want to kind of look at it, how you want to look at it, basically. You know, and we find out there are kind of certain ways to potentially combat it, and you know, it has a kind of a telepathic type of flair to it, so it's fairly involved. Now, a lot of times you'll hear me say kind of style over substance. I'll actually have to say this was more substance over style, almost, because it has got some really good ideas, and it's, you know, it's comparing itself against kind of social networking in a certain degree. Basically, when you have this virus, you are then connected to the world, basically. The main issues for me with this film is the kind of its visual choices. I mean, some of them are very good. There's lots of gooey effects here. If you like kind of like bloody, gory effects, then there's plenty of that. Lots of like black blood and stuff like that. So that's all kind of good. But I've seen some criticism leveled at this film and its directorial style, in the fact that it's very MTV-like, and I can totally understand where it's coming from, because basically it's very kind of like very sort of quick cuts, and almost has an ADHD feel kind of to it, where it's kind of, it just can't, it won't let you kind of like take in a kind of a scene for very long, basically, before it has a kind of another jump cut. So it feels kind of quite kinetic in a way, but at the same time, I don't know, it definitely does have this kind of MTV feel to it. Plus there's lots of kind of like neon lights and kind of black light and stuff like that, which I didn't feel was necessary. So it gives it a kind of young, hip feel to it, which, I don't know, it will appeal to certain people, but for me, I felt it was, I don't know, it was quite a good idea here, but I felt maybe some of the stylistic choices missed a little bit for me. But that's not the self. This is a good plot, and it's played out a little bit differently. Like I said, normally I don't really like films that kind of show you things towards the end, because you do end up knowing the fate of certain characters, and that's true of this film, and it still bugs me in this, even though, you know, it's somewhat interesting finding out what's happened to them. You still ultimately, it kind of cuts the tension when you feel, well, I know this person's fate because we've already kind of seen it, so you're not really going to be surprised about what's happening, and even though it kind of tries to make you feel that way. So I don't know, but like I said, it's despite some of the kind of the choices made here, it's definitely a fairly good horror film. I think it's fairly well acted, and it's kind of like a different sort of style in it. Nevertheless, not that it's kind of like a visual flourish, even though I don't like some of the visual choices here. You know, creatively, I can understand where it's going, if that makes sense. So overall, I would probably recommend this film, unless you're like a real old school horror fan. Then the kind of the modern sensibilities, I think, film may annoy you, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. If you kind of don't like gory films, you may want to give this one a berth, because there's lots of goo here. basically. Anyway, 7 out of 10 from me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.